You were raised for a world that no longer exists, and that's not a weakness. You carry something most people can't name. Not trauma, not nostalgia, not regret. It's weight. The kind of weight you learned to hold before anyone taught you how to talk about it. You were born into a world still catching its breath. A world rebuilt by people who had already seen it collapse once. Your parents didn't grow up protected. They grew up interrupted by hunger, by war, by loss that didn't come with explanations. So when they raised you, they didn't ask how you felt. They asked whether you were ready. Ready to show up. Ready to do what needed doing. Ready to carry responsibility before you had language for fear. You weren't taught to express strength. You were taught to be strong, and for a long time, the world agreed with that definition. Effort mattered more than attention. Reliability mattered more than visibility. Character was something proven quietly, over time. You learned that competence spoke for itself. That dignity didn't need an audience. That resilience wasn't something you announced, it was something you practiced. Then the rules changed. Silence became suspicious. Restraint became misread as emotional absence. And suddenly, strength was measured not by what you carried, but by what you revealed. When you don't narrate your inner life, people assume there isn't one. But there is. You were simply never trained to perform it. Because you didn't grow up alone, you grew up contained. There were no constant check-ins, but there were always eyes. Porches, neighbors, shopkeepers, teachers who knew your name before your story. Freedom existed, but it came with memory. If you crossed a line, someone noticed. If you earned trust, it followed you. You learned early that reputation mattered, that consistency was safety, that being the same person everywhere wasn't a limitation, it was survival. So you adapted, not by demanding space, but by learning how to fit without disappearing. You waited your turn, you carried your share, you learned patience before entitlement. In a generation that arrived all at once, attention was scarce, and you learned not to chase it. That didn't make you small, it made you steady. Pain entered your life early too, but not as a catastrophe. Playgrounds didn't negotiate. Gravity didn't apologize. If you fell, you stood back up and recalibrated. No one rushed in to label the moment. No one asked you to analyze the feeling before continuing. You learned something most people never do. Pain wasn't an emergency. It was information. And fear wasn't something to eliminate. It was something to work with. Failure showed up the same way. Public, unfiltered, unrescued. You lost. You missed. You tried, and sometimes failed in front of everyone. And then the world moved on. No intervention, no reframe, no protection from discomfort. And that taught you something permanent. Failure wasn't identity, it was data. It told you where effort mattered, where limits existed, what needed acceptance or practice. You learned how to lose without collapsing. But you also learned how to carry disappointment alone. That part stayed quiet. Because the adults who raised you didn't grow up talking through fear. They grew up surviving without the luxury of it. So love looked practical, a stable roof, a full refrigerator, rules that didn't bend when emotions ran high. Predictability was safety, control was care. They didn't explain the world, they structured it. And you learned to function inside that structure, even when uncertainty hummed underneath. You lived with threat in the background long before you understood it. Sirens, drills, calm voices preparing you for something no desk could protect you from. You learned how to sit inside uncertainty and keep going. Then one day, the adults lost their composure. Missiles weren't hypothetical anymore. Leaders weren't permanent. Hope didn't feel guaranteed. You watched history interrupt itself. Live. Assassinations. Cities burning. Certainty dissolving in real time. And still, life continued. School. Dinner. Tomorrow. You learned a lesson few people ever articulate. Hope isn't confidence. It's persistence. It's showing up even when belief hurts. It's functioning when guarantees disappear. That didn't make you cynical. It made you seasoned. But here's the cost no one names. When you spend a lifetime holding things together, you don't always learn how to set them down. You know how to endure pressure, but not always how to release it. You know how to be dependable, but not how to ask for help. You know how to survive heaviness, but not how to say this is heavy. So you carried it, quietly, competently, for decades. And now, in a world finally learning the language of emotion, you may feel out of sync. Not broken, not outdated, just trained for a different reality. That's not a flaw. That's history living inside you. And you don't have to prove your strength anymore. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to explain why slowing down feels unfamiliar. The resilience that built you doesn't disappear when you soften. It becomes intentional. If this feels familiar, you're not alone. And if you've carried this weight quietly for a long time, you've already survived the part that was meant to break you. Now, you're allowed to live beyond it.